educated than 99% of Americans if we learn about Cicero alone on this stuff. The glossaries, everybody should have, we had some handouts that just made copies of the glossary for week 2. And then secondly, we'll get to it here in a few minutes, the timeline leading up to the Declaration of Independence. It's got a bunch of blue on there. And then finally, a highlighted copy of the Declaration of Independence so we can focus on some of the things we want to. When you look at this glossary, you might think, well, we already talked about a bunch of that stuff, and that's true. We're only going to kind of lightly do it to re-emphasize it, and there are about 3 or 4 lines on here that will cover most of what we're going to talk about. But to begin with, again, natural law. I just want you to remember Cicero when we get around to reading the Declaration, and you're saying, my goodness, there he is, there he is, there he is. And Richard Henry Lee, there he is. He got it. Thomas Jefferson was brilliant enough that he stood on the shoulders of giants. And he used phrases from other people. He had no use reinventing the wheel. When somebody said something that was apparently inspired or compelling and really said it right, then Thomas Jefferson used it. Importance of religion. Let me just ask you about this, because we're talking about the laws of nature, of nature's God. And I told you last week that I have this one full-time professor up there that tells me you can't talk about God in the classroom, you know. I said, you teach federal government, how can you do that? How do you talk about the laws? How do you talk about the Creator? How do you talk about God-given unalienable rights as the basis of our whole government here? And that's everything. It's a question. Is religion important? Why is religion important? Is it important as far as government is concerned? What does religion have to do with government? We're talking about our American system of government here. Anyone have any thoughts? Yes?
I think it's the basic moral structure. Well, that's one reason why this nation is going down the tubes, because we've gotten away from God.
I'm tempted, Madison saying that you got to have a moral people, and Jefferson over and over and over again, that we get our rights from gods. We don't get them from kings, we get them from the King of Kings. And that is the basis of law in American law. So in America, with American government, God is essential, at least if you're talking about American government. It's the basis of everything. Like I say, we're going to take a whole night and just talk about religious freedom and the attacks on religious freedom and how it relates to government here and what possibly we can do. It has, like I said last week, made a lot of allies out of churches that may not have worked together very closely on other things. The Catholic Church is very heavily into religious freedom, as are some of the other churches too, and have some great websites that we'll share with you, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. Unalienable rights. I should have put on there God-given unalienable rights, but you remember our little catechism from last time that said that, I call it the catechism, that said that God is the sovereign, but He made us sovereigns when He made us free. When He gave us unalienable rights, He made us, the people, the source of law in a free society. That's pretty much just paraphrasing Jefferson, a bunch of different things that he said, and some of the other founding fathers. But when He gave us unalienable rights, our natural rights, the rights that are ours by birth, that we had when we were born, because we're created in His image. And as He is, quoting Judge Napolitano now here, that we'll listen to in a while, as God is totally free, we are meant to be, and we are the source of law. We're above government. So we'll see in here that Jefferson said that governments are instituted to protect our God-given unalienable rights. That's the reason we have governments. If we don't have those, if government's not protecting our unalienable rights, then they're just not performing the main function that it's meant to. Anybody that's new that did not get a glossary, a timeline, and a and a Declaration of Independence. The consent of the government. Again, this is somewhat review, but we want to emphasize it. Why do we have to have the consent of the government? We're going to read about this in the Declaration of Independence. Why do you put it in there? Why does government have to have the consent of the governed to govern us?
Because without consent, they just pretty much can do anything they want.
So why can't they do anything they wanted for 5,000, almost 6,000 years?
Men are not perfect, and so power corrupts absolutely. Power corrupts. So without
You're right. You're right. But Lee was not here last week, so somebody help her out. Why is it they have to have, there's a word I'm looking for. You didn't-
Sovereign.
Yeah, what about sovereign?
Over to the government.
In some limited
Giving them the
ways.
authority to do what we cannot.
God is the sovereign, but he delegated his sovereignty to us when he gave us our inalienable rights. And that's the basis of government. That's the whole basis in America. So they have to, they're governing us, but they have to have the consent of the governed, because we're not just the governed, we're also the sovereigns. We're the ones that created them. We can, like Bill Cosby said, I made you, I'll make another one just like you. We can get rid of them if we ever had to. I don't want to be too flippant about that. I'm not ready to get rid of the U.S. Constitution.
Well, yeah, in the Declaration of Independence, it says if the government violates our sovereign rights, they no longer serve us, and we have the right to
Responsibility, actually.
we have the right to rescind their authority.
Looks like we're ready to get to the Declaration here. But before that, that's exactly right.
Actually,
It's exactly the words that he says.
And Jefferson got those same words. If you look there in he went to a college taught by Scottish professors.
He got a lot of that. He learned about Cicero and so on.
And he was taught the Scottish Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Albrooth, and it says in there almost those same words. When they were declaring their independence from England in their letter, they use those same words, that they have a right to their king is elected at that time, and they have a right to, if he violates their sovereignty, if he violates their rights, they can remove him from and put.
They said that, but they didn't do it there. Other people said it. They've been saying it for 50, 100.
They tried
until we did it. But the possibility of the altar abolition timeline. I won't go through every single one of them, but just to give the lead up, so we kind of have a feel for the Declaration of Independence. America went through misery. They went through, in the long run, it worked out. I've had great problems ourselves, but if we overcome those things, then we grow. And God works with nations the same way that he works with people. He certainly did with our nation. We talk about the Second World War, my dad's generation being the world's greatest generation. Some of you, there's nobody here quite that old, but they were the greatest generation because they were backed up against the wall, and they responded, and they were successful in it. I think that in Valley Forge, they were maybe the greatest generation too, because they had these unbelievable things they had to deal with. Well, America had a tough situation to deal with up against the most powerful nation that had ever been on earth, that we know of, and the most powerful military at the time. So starting off from 1756 to 1763, is it going to bug you that I move around because?
No, I'll keep up with you.
Okay. From 17, let's just do it this way, starting with the 7 Years' War between France and England. It was a very expensive war. Wars are expensive, and they needed the money to pay for it. And they had this productive colony over there. Let's milk that colony and start taxing them. So they started taxing. I won't go through some of them, but in 17, so that was 1756 to 63. And so in 64, we had the Sugar Act, which taxed